What's down, people, and welcome back to another episode of Ghetto Gospel. So where we left off at, Noah needed pairs of animals, so God brought him pairs of animals. To this day, folks still saying the flood wasn't real, and saying the flood wasn't real is really just a gateway drug to saying God ain't real, so folks can live however they want. So this week, here come the rain. Now at the start of chapter 7, it's telling you the last couple of things that Noah and his fam was wrapping up before it started flooding. And it's easy for us to think that Noah knew just when the rain was gonna start, what kind of timeline he had, but it don't say that nowhere. Like, put yourself in his shoes. Imagine you've been building for decades, and you know that you're getting toward the end, but you ain't exactly sure when things gonna pop off. And add to it, now you got all these animals showing up like God said they would, so you know time getting short. Wifey can't possibly be happy about all the animal deposits laying all over the place. And then add to it, God said you gotta have 7 pair of the clean animals. And if you ain't spent no time with no church folks, you probably wondering, what is a clean animal? I thought all animals was dirty. And the answer is simple, but it's also complicated. So the book of Leviticus is one of them books that a lot of folks just skim through at best. And that's kind of understandable. It's a lot of rules and details of the law that God laid out to Moses. How to live, how to work, how to worship. And in chapter 11, it talk about what to eat and what's considered clean and unclean. But here's the thing. Leviticus happened 10 generations after Noah. So the question is, how the heck did Noah know the difference? That's a question the Bible don't really give a clear answer on. The two main theories is either that God told him, which would make sense except for the fact that that ain't what it say. The other theory is that people already knew what animals was clean from the beginning. I can understand that theory too. But again, I ain't found that in there either. Now I'm gonna pause for a second because that bring up a good point. If you go all the way back to episode 6, you'll remember that I said, it's some questions you're gonna run across in this book that you're not gonna find no easy answers for. Not a lot, and never the big ones. Those got answers. They just the answers that most folks don't wanna hear. And I stand on that. And that's one of the reasons I ain't tripping about not knowing how Noah knew which animals was clean. The other one is that later on in here, Jesus himself say not to be calling stuff impure that God had made clean. That was also after Jesus fulfilled the law, but that's a whole other episode I'm not about to get into right now. It's a bunch of folks out there who like to argue about which animals is cool to eat, but the last time I checked, ain't nobody building an ark and talking about rain coming. That ain't what I meant, and y'all know it. In the episode about context, yes, I'm referencing that episode again. One of the things I mentioned a few times is that it's important to remember the time that this stuff was written in. And when somebody trying to tell you what you should and you shouldn't do, because it's in the Bible, it's at least 3 things you ought to be asking. Do that part of the Bible apply to the point in history I'm living in? Do this part of the Bible apply to specific people, especially people who ain't me? Is this part of the Bible just overall good advice that I ought to be following anyway? Like not going out here and getting in a bunch of debt. I know most of us done it. What you talking about, most of us? You in debt right now? Shh, chill, fam. Y'all can handle that how y'all want. But that's just the 3 pieces of advice I give. So anyway, let me pick up the pace because the time getting short. So in verse 7, it say that Noah and his fam got in the ark because of the flood waters. That probably ought to be translated more like they got in the ark in advance or before the flood waters. It's not super important, but it does paint a different picture of what the situation looked like. So they all hop in the boat, and the next thing it say is super interesting to me. In verse 15, it say that after they was all in the ark, God shut them in. And I ain't gonna front. I initially ain't know what to do with that. But when I started digging at it, I noticed that the word they use for shut in is also the word used for imprisoned, which is weird, right? I mean, it was a whole flood going on out there. Folks was dying left and right. I can't imagine somebody wanting to get out on day 1. It say in verse 17 that it flooded for 40 days and that the water stayed on earth for 150 days. How many of y'all want to spend 150 days on a boat taking care of animals with your family? I got one homie that would have turned that thing into a family barbecue and made half the animals on earth extinct. You know who he is, but most of us don't rock with our folks like that. The point is, any situation, no matter how good it is, could seem like prison if you stuck in it for long enough. That's why it's so important not to let yourself get hung up on your current situation. Otherwise, you'll be sitting in a position of privilege and wanting to get off the boat. I ain't saying that Noah's family wanted to get off the boat. I ain't saying that the group of daughter-in-laws ain't get along with the mother-in-law. I ain't saying that Noah had his sons drove and wishing they could go somewhere. All of that is stuff that I'm not saying. Is it possible it happened that way? Of course it is. But that ain't what I'm saying though, because that ain't what's written down. I got an imagination just like y'all do, but I at least recognize that it's important to keep it in check and let the book say what it's gonna say. And with that, I'ma wrap it up. So other than that, I'll see y'all next week. And as always, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.